back to another episode of the podcast that has not yet been named, but we will name it soon. If you have ideas, let us know. But this is Aaron and my better half, Patience, and today we're going to be chatting a little bit about one of the things that has helped our marriage so freaking much, which is actually focusing on ourselves. Yes, it seems kind of counterintuitive, right? Counterproductive. You should be focusing on your spouse. You'll see what we mean here in just a second. The thing that has helped our marriage so much is focusing on ourselves. And so we just want to chat a little bit about that and kind of talk through. I'd love to hear about some of the things that you, my love, have done for self-improvement. And then I'll talk through some of the things that I've done and, just kind of see like what, what that has, the impact that has had on our relationship. So like, tell me a little bit about that before we kind of dive in.
Yeah. I mean, one of the biggest things that helped with improving our marriage and just improving myself in general was going to therapy. That's something we mentioned when we did our first Facebook Live. But going to therapy literally helped so much with learning about my communication styles. Another huge thing is just thinking about the person that I wanted to be and the wife that I wanted to be.
Oh, I did not know this.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me about that.
But like thinking about, like where I'm at now and like what I want my future self to look like. Like, do I want my future self to look like a frustrated individual that can't communicate through their problems and goes on TikTok for 6 hours a day, and that inspired me to not be that, So going to therapy was a huge one. Also thinking about like, I was, and I still struggle with this, but I was very obsessed with TikTok and Facebook Reels and Instagram Reels, social media. Yeah, I know. But social media, it played such a big role in my life, and I still struggle with it, as you know. But literally looking at my life and being like, if I keep this up, what is my life going to look like in 5-10 years? Well, that's going to be me sitting on the couch watching TikTok while my child plays by himself,
Wow.
And like, that doesn't serve me, and that doesn't serve anyone else. So I think in December of 2024, I actually deleted TikTok off of my phone for the Christmas season. I was trying to fast from TikTok, and I was like, I'm just not gonna use TikTok. I deleted it off my phone. I was like, at the end of this, when it's time for 2025 to come around, maybe I'll put it back on my phone. But as time went on, I realized I get so much more done, and I do things that actually fulfill me, like reading books, if I don't have TikTok on my phone. So like the self-development that came from thinking about who I want to be changed so much of my habits.
Where did that come from? The whole idea of like who you wanted to be. Did you like see that somewhere in a book? Or was it just like the Lord like hit you one day?
No, it was a book. I think that it was the book How to Do Things You Hate.
Things You Hate, yeah. Is that that or Atomic Habits?
Probably, I think both, honestly.
Really?
I think they both complemented each other really well. So I think it started with Atomic Habits, and then How to Do Things You Hate mentioned it a few times, but I think it was Atomic Habits. Yeah, so I had read that throughout the year of 2024. It took multiple months because, it wasn't a priority, but now I read much more often. But yeah, looking at who I want to become and the wife that I want to be helps so much with my own individual growth. And I'm sure that's helped in our marriage so much.
So much.
Yeah.
And I think with me as well, you deleting TikTok or like setting limits on being on social media and like putting those boundaries in place for yourself actually inspired me a ton to like put time limits on how much time I spend on social media, things like that. Because it's like I did that with Facebook because like on Facebook, I could just get caught in a doom scroll, right? And I'd be like, it's like obviously I have so many more important things to do.
Yeah.
And it's not like I'm, on the news feed. It's not like there's anything out there that's actually that important, right? And I'm surrounded by fairly cool Facebook friends. Like my Facebook news feed isn't, like what are other people's Facebook news feeds? I don't know.
Really
but
know.
like it's a bunch of like business things and like self-development and stuff and like all that, but I still get caught in that scroll. It's like I don't need to be doing that constantly. I just need to be producing, creating. And so like that was a big thing as well. And so another thing to touch on, like in my life, one of the things that I've done that I think has seriously improved our marriage is I was working with a mindset coach, and he kind of helped me to see things on a bigger scale,
Yeah.
to remove a lot of the fears and a lot of like my desires that I have, and realize that like if I'm operating from a place of fear and desire, I'm not operating with intention. I'm not operating with clarity on like my values.
Yeah.
I'm just operating based on what I want and what I'm afraid
Yeah.
of.
And scarcity too, like
Yeah.
operating out of scarcity, which doesn't really serve you.
Scarcity.
Yeah.
I've always pronounced it scarcity. Maybe someone
Either
pronounces it
I'm
scarcity.
saying it completely wrong,
Maybe it's just the
or
New
it's a
Jersey
New
way of
Jersey
saying New
thing.
Jersey
Oh,
thing.
gosh.
Yeah.
Now I
What,
have
what
to-
was another New Jersey thing? It was
what was it? I used to say horrible. I used to say
horrible. That's what it was.
And I remember I went to college and I said, that's horrible. And someone was like, yeah, that's horrible. And I was like, what?
That's so good.
And I literally questioned. I was like, have I been saying horrible wrong my entire life?
That must have been so horrible.
And yeah. But like, and I literally thought I'd been saying it wrong my whole life. So I switched over to horrible. Now I say horrible rather than horrible. But
Good.
yeah, I know. But like literally I'd never even thought about it. And then I come to find out it's definitely like a New Jersey northeastern thing. And now I don't say it. And I kind of wish I did, because I don't really have many New Jersey accent words that I have
Keep
left.
your scarcity. It's okay.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Anyways,
Yes.
sidetrack.
So like, removing fear and desire, because like if you're operating from fear and desire, then you're not operating based on will. It's just this, like you're being pulled every which way.
Yeah.
And it's not really you, right? And you're either running from things or you're running towards things, and you're not able to just sit and have intention. So like that's been something that's been really helpful for me. It's like, okay, like I came into this marriage with a lot of expectations, with a lot of dreams of what I thought it would be, a lot of desires, and also a lot of fears of what if that never happens? What if my dream marriage never comes to fruition? And there's a lot of fear with that. I'm running from it, and it was just like exhausting and debilitating, as well as the desire of like I was trying to change you so freaking much, because I wanted you to match what I wanted my dream wife to be. But being able to look at those things, and it really boiled down to two things. One, again, Weekend to Remember helped a lot.
Yeah,
to kind of
it
make
really
this click,
did.
because it was like, your dream wife almost, or your dream husband is like an idol, right?
Yeah.
Like you're almost having an affair, or at least this was for me. I don't think they were talking about this at Weekend to Remember, but we talked about this. It's like, it clicked for me. It's like, holy smokes, I've been having an affair
With your dream spouse.
with my dream spouse,
Yeah.
wanting her
Yeah.
rather than the wonderful woman that God gave me.
Yeah.
Holy smokes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Super convicting, super painful to admit, right?
Yeah.
But very true, because like once you admit that, then you can actually do something about it. But also the fears and the desires thing. It's like, okay, like, well, what are, and something that really helped me is like taking whatever your fear is and then listing out the 25 benefits of if that fear were to happen. All right, what are 25 good things that come up if my fear comes true? Okay, and then the same thing with desires is like, all right, what do I want? What am I chasing after? And then what are 25 drawbacks to that thing?
Yeah.
What are 25 bad things, drawbacks that come up if I get that thing that I want? And just listing those things out, even past 25, until you can genuinely say you no longer are afraid of it, or you no longer want it. And you see it as a truly neutral event. And then you can make decisions not because you want it or you're afraid of it happening. You can make decisions just based on intention, on what is actually in line with your values. Was hugely helpful, really, really cool. But also in terms of being able to serve you better, now I'm not operating based on like, I want you to be a certain way, or I'm afraid of you not being who I want you to be, because I can see that it blinded me from being able to accept the wonderful bride that God had given me, and I'd been married to for 2 whole years, and I missed out on so much because I was trying to have this affair on the side with someone that doesn't exist or is out there, rather than who I have in front of me.
Yeah.
That was huge.
And this
for
is
me.
like a whole side note, and we won't go too deep into it, but Weekend to Remember was talking about receiving, not just receiving your spouse, but accepting your spouse.
Carrot cake 'em.
Carrot caking your spouse. You receive your fried okra. Well, no, I think it was like boiled okra was the example he gave.
Yeah.
You know, like boiled,
Yeah.
snot-looking
Yeah.
okra. But
You accept.
something that you would accept is carrot cake. That's
No,
something.
no, so yeah, it's the other way around. So it's like, something nasty. It's like, well, I can accept that. Doesn't mean that I'll receive it.
I think
right?
I think we're getting. I don't know which definition is right.
Honestly,
but
it
either
could
way,
be either, but yes.
it really could be either. But rather than looking at your spouse and being like, oh, someone gave me this thing, this person, he's in my life now, he's just sitting over there, rather than looking at your spouse that way, but viewing them as a gift from God and like being excited about that and thanking God for that for your spouse, that those are two totally different things. So that's a whole side note, though. But I thought that was so cool.
Man. Yeah, receiving that carrot
Adam
cake.
carrot caked Eve.
Yeah. I think, and actually, we could probably find the real word if we go into the scriptures and just look like Adam received Eve. Yeah. I think it's receive. I'm pretty sure. I'll go back and check. But anyway,
we'll have to check,
yeah. So that whole concept of like, okay, I've been given this gift. This is the wife that I have. Receive her.
Yeah. And you're not married to someone else. Like there is no other reality where
and divorce is not an option.
Yeah.
Like we're here.
Yeah.
Right?
You're here right now. So like accept it, receive it or not, like there's no changing it.
Yep.
So do your best to love and cherish your spouse because that's what you have. That's who you have in your life right now. Yeah. This is getting off topic of what our original thing was.
Right? Speaking of like receiving your spouse, there is also an element of like putting your best foot forward and being the best version of yourself for your spouse.
Yeah.
And so in our relationship, that was a huge thing is both of us working on ourselves to be better than we were yesterday and making that 1% improvement every day that compounds into great returns. And so like for you, I don't think it was something where like you were trying to overnight be someone you weren't, right? It wasn't like when you started this personal development journey, Patience, that you were just like, bam, like I'm going to be someone different tomorrow. Like, no, it was I'm going to start, reading this book. I'm going to make 1% improvements every day and that'll compound over time. What was that process for you where you were working on yourself? What did that look like? I obviously know some of it was reading. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, I'll start with TikTok. When I first deleted it off my phone in December of 2024, which is not that long ago, I was having withdrawals. I was like, if I had free time, I was like, what do I do? Like, what do I do with this? Because I would usually go on TikTok. I'd be like, what do I do? But you know what I did? I did things that were productive. I read books. I turned to other things that filled my soul. So that's one thing. I'm also forgetting the question that you just asked me.
Well, like, what did that personal development journey look like for you? Like, what else did you do?
So it wasn't easy. You don't just turn around and say, I'm going to delete TikTok and I'm not going to look at it ever again. Like, that was hard. And I took it off my phone, so I couldn't look at it, but it wasn't easy overnight. And like the first 2 weeks, I was literally having withdrawals about like, how am I going to entertain myself? How am I going to numb myself? What am I going to go to when I'm bored? But all of those things are not good, not a good way of viewing TikTok or having free time. And then 2, like it got easier over time. And I think personal development and change always starts hard. So you can look at someone who's overweight or obese, and it's really hard at first. And like literally just walking on the treadmill for a mile could be really hard for someone. But over time, it gets easier and easier, and you become more of the person that you want to be.
It's almost like even in that scenario, you're not even just changing who you are. You're chiseling off the parts of the parts that you've taken on, right? Yeah. The lies from the enemy that were whispered in your ear that you accepted, right? Which is what we talked about in the last episode. The lies from the enemy that you accepted and you received those lies from the enemy, right? And you almost like cake on all of this extra junk that isn't really you. Yeah. And so like going to TikTok to self-medicate from boredom or a lack of being satisfied with life or whatever it is it's not you, it's not who you are.
Yeah.
But in that process of chiseling, it's painful.
Yeah.
But it's not that you're just transforming yourself. It's just that you're getting rid of all the stuff that stands between the real you and who you see in the mirror.
Yeah.
And who other people get to see. Like when you've gone through this journey, it's so cool because I feel like I just know more the patients that I fell in love with, the patients that I married, right? The person that I look at today has less stuff caked on top of her than before, right? And you're just more you. It's not even that the you is different.
Yeah.
It's you're more you, right?
You know what else helped was the iron supplements.
And iron supplements, honestly, that makes a huge difference. So for context, for anyone who missed the last episode, patients,
I got some blood work done, and it came back that I was low iron, which I kind of knew my whole life, but I never really did anything about it.
Yeah. And so
I started taking iron supplements, and it literally changed my entire life. I was less miserable every day, and therefore my husband was less miserable every day.
Ain't that right?
So,
It's honestly been amazing.
Yeah.
But another thing you started doing as well is reading, right?
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that.
Reading can be hard, especially when you are used to TikTok or social media. I think when I first started reading again, I used to be a bookworm growing up. Like my parents can attest, I would fly through chapter books in like a couple of hours, and they would constantly be buying me more books. And that's changed over time because I've been busy or I didn't make time for it. So I think when I first started reading again this year, or 2024 technically, it was really hard, and I would do like a couple pages at a time. But I think the biggest thing there is starting. And I think Atomic Habits also talks about this, where it's like, just do something. Do the bare minimum. Say you'll read 1 page, and if you find you're enjoying it, you might read 3, or start with 3 pages. And if you find you're enjoying it, maybe you'll read a whole chapter. And I think that's the same thing with fitness or any kind of goal that you have for your life. Is just start somewhere, start small, and the momentum will come.
That's huge. And so what were the 2 books, unless there was more that I had missed, what were the 2 books that you read for personal development to start?
Yeah, to start, it was Atomic Habits and How to Do Things You Hate. Yeah. And I think that's the title of it. But those 2 were huge in my personal growth journey. Another thing that was huge for personal growth for me was seeing you pursuing growth. And I think I was really stagnant for a long time, but then you started looking into mentorship and coaching. And you've always been one to invest in yourself, not just for your business, but personally. And seeing you invest in yourself and push yourself to grow, and taking the time to sit down and do mental work every day and just pursuing that was really awesome. And I wanted to be better for you. Like I wanted to be on your level. I wanted to be matching you and being equally yoked in that way, you know? I don't know if that's the right term to use. But another thing that I want to bring up on that topic is how at first it felt really, I felt really insecure seeing you go to coaching and seeing you pursuing growth. I felt really insecure because I was like, I'm not doing that. And I'm not good enough for Aaron because he's pursuing these things and I'm not. Or I don't want to pursue growth right now and he is. So I'm not good enough. Like I felt miserable, and I felt like I had a standard that I couldn't reach.
Those lies from the enemy.
Yes, those lies from the enemy. And in reality, I could look at that and be like, I might not be where he is right now. I might not be investing in myself the same way, but that doesn't mean I can't grow. And just because he's doing all these things doesn't mean I can't do them too. It just starts with smaller baby steps. You know, it doesn't have to be like, I'm investing in a $10,000 coaching program right now. Like I could just start with reading a couple of pages in a self-development book every day. So changing that narrative from being like, my husband, you are better than me and I'm not good enough for you and I'm not matching your level, to my husband is pursuing growth. I want to match his level. I want to match that excellency that you're putting out. I want to match the effort that he's doing. And rather than me putting myself down, you pursuing your individual growth was bringing me up. Even though it was on a different pace, a different level. I don't want to say behind you, but I was less motivated just seeing you pursue growth spurred me on to also pursue growth.
When was that shift where it shifted from insecurity and shame into productive action and then actually like being spurred forward? When was that?
I think timeline wise, it was early summer.
Okay.
I know we had just moved here, but I think through therapy, I talked about it a lot with my therapist. And I think there were some other shifts as well that I can't quite remember right now, but therapy.
It all just goes back to therapy, man.
Yeah. Just go to therapy. Yeah.
What were the conversations that you and your therapist were having, if you want to share, where you kind of had those epiphany moments? Or was it an epiphany moment, or was it just something that was
I don't think it was an epiphany thing. I think it was like a very gradual thing over time. And I remember actually there was one time I had just gotten back from a trip with my parents in June. And do you remember I just came back and you had picked me up from the airport and we went to downtown Nashville to get some food. And I ended up crying over dinner, which is, it happens sometimes. But I remember crying over dinner because you were like, I'm learning so much. And in my mind I was like, what have I learned? What am I doing? Like, he's so much better than me. I can't match his standard. I'm not Layla Hormozy. I was constantly comparing myself with Layla Hormozy, which is a whole different side note. But I was like, I'm not pursuing big business dreams with my spouse. And I'm just not this person. And I remember coming back from the trip and we were eating Hattie B's and I was like crying at the table. And like, I think that was kind of like a breaking point for me to be like, am I really not going to allow my husband to talk about the ways that he's growing and changing and pursuing the Lord and pursuing his personal development? Like, is this really going to be the wife that I'm going to be where I can't let him do that without feeling insecure? Like, a good Christian woman isn't insecure. There's a verse that I'm thinking of. It's like, she's clothed with strength and dignity and lives without fear of the future or something like that.
Proverbs 31.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely in Proverbs 31. I'll say that. But am I really going to be the spouse, the wife that is insecure and just held back by these insecurities and held back by shame? Or am I going to pursue growth, pursue the Lord, and do it with excellence? Like, we have values, and I think it's so important that despite what we're feeling, we choose to live according to those values. And I think that was a turning point for me, feeling less insecure and starting to pursue growth more. But I definitely think it was kind of like a snowball effect. I don't think there was like a
That's
click,
huge.
you know.
That's huge. It was definitely a tough dinner.
Do you remember that dinner?
Yes, I do. It was definitely.
It's one of your 1 seconds, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. It was definitely a tough one, but it's really cool to see that, you know, even in the midst of how difficult that day was, and those conversations, that it led to such good. You know, like praise God for that. And also like go you for being so vulnerable and open as we had that conversation, and just like being willing to just come face to face with that stuff and address it and like work through it and like walk out the other side better. Right. A lot of couples don't have that. You know, maybe you're a husband and your wife struggles to you know, have that same level of, you know, kind of accountability that Patience is talking about here. Or maybe you are the husband where your wife has been coming to you and has been saying, hey, you know, like these things are upsetting me, they're bothering me. Or maybe you're the one carrying the insecurity and the shame in the relationship and you're struggling to come out of that. But on either side of the table here, if you're listening to this and you're in the boat where you're struggling to take accountability, just realize that it is so much more freeing when the lies of the enemy have been driven out. And when all that extra stuff that's caked on gets chiseled off. And it's painful in the moment. But when that extra baggage comes off and the real you starts shining through, you feel lighter, you feel freer, you feel more like you, who you were made to be. And the key component of this is not something where if your spouse is with you, if your partner's with you, listening to this right now, and you don't think this applies to you, but you think it applies to them, this is not the moment where you go nudging them in the shoulder and you say, hey, you need to listen to this. It's like, no, this is about you.
Look
this
at
is
yourself.
you focusing on yourself, right?
Which is what we're talking about. Like, focusing on your self-development will help your marriage so much.
Yes, and the Melody Fabian, again, with CD and Melody Fabian, Hanging with the Fabians, awesome podcast, go check it out. She talked about this at Weekend to Remember is, put down the magnifying glass and pick up the mirror. I'll say that again for, dramatic effect. Put down the magnifying glass and pick up the mirror. Yeah. Take the plank out of your own eye before you start searching for the speck in your spouse's eye.
Yeah.
Right? And so this concept cannot be overstated that you have no proper perspective to go trying to change your spouse and turn them into who you think they should be when you yourself are so caked on with junk that you can't even see clearly. You can't move clearly.
Yeah.
And this is something that I struggled with for so long. I've struggled a lot with having a critical heart, a critical spirit. And that's been caked on to me, right? Extra baggage I've been carrying. And so for the longest time, I took the verse in scripture that says to present your wife blameless before the Lord. I took that to mean that I need to change my wife, which was wrong. And I had all of the biblical, I was like, oh, it says it in the Bible.
Yeah, it's the lies of the enemy distorting what real truth is.
Almost truth.
Yeah, it's
right?
almost.
But it led to so much heartbreak and a lot of the shame that Patience is talking about right now. A lot of the shame that you're talking about came from me, right? I'm perpetuating it. I may not have started it, right? This is stuff that goes all the way back through your whole life. But I perpetuated that, right? And a lot of times I didn't create space. And I would say the right words, but my energy behind them was different.
Yeah.
Right? It was like, I may not have even said anything, but on the inside, I was resentful. And I was like, man, if only you were a little different. If only you were the person I wanted you to be, then it would just be so much better. You would be so much better. Right? And it was so wicked, twisted, and vile. And you're sitting here talking about, it's like, well, when you really felt spurred on toward growth is not when I told you and tried to change you. It was when I didn't.
It's when you were pursuing your own growth.
It was when I was focusing on my growth, myself.
Yeah.
And I was just doing it on my own.
Yeah.
And I was just sharing with you, hey, this is what I've been doing. It's so freaking cool.
Yeah.
I just want to share it with you because I'm so excited about these things that I'm learning, right? These are the ways that I'm working on being a better husband for you.
Yeah.
And then you hear that and it spurs you to be like, well, if he's doing this to be a better husband for me, how can I be a better wife for him? And that was the moment that things changed. Yeah. Right? That was kind of that tipping point. Yeah. It's not when I was trying to change you. It's not when I'm nudging you in the shoulder and saying, hey, you should listen to this. It's when I'm like, I pull up the mirror and put down the magnifying glass. Yeah. It's like, well, let me go ahead and take the log out of my own eye. And I think that's the proper, understanding of that verse of present your wife blameless to the Lord. And so this is the call to husbands in the church and in society. And again, the only real proper marriage is Christian marriage. And we can have a whole other episode where we talk about that and why that is. Controversy time. But that's really what it's about. It's about, focusing on yourself. Not in the sense, now obviously I want to clarify, we talk about this. This doesn't mean focusing on desires. It means focusing on your own growth, right? Focusing on pursuing the Lord, focusing on repenting from your own sin.
Focusing on your identity in Christ.
Your identity in Christ. Chiseling off all the stuff that isn't in line with your identity in Christ, right? It's also not about changing yourself. Yeah. It's not about transforming yourself into a better version. It's about chiseling off all the stuff that isn't in line with who you truly are. Yeah. All the lies of the enemy that you've accepted, you've caked on, that extra weight and baggage that you're carrying that isn't really you, and letting go of those things. And it can be hard because we associate all of those things that come from the lies of the enemy. We associate that with being our identity. And we think that we need to be, you know, this different
Such a
person.
lie,
And this is, for context, this is for those that are born again Christians, is who I'm really speaking to right now. If you are not a born again Christian or you don't know what that means, open up the scriptures, check out the book of John, you know, start reading the word, seek spiritual guidance, you know, head over to your local Orthodox church and ask the priests there about, okay, what does it mean to actually be born again? What does it actually look like to be made a new creation? But this specifically, what we're talking about here is for those who are born again Christians, who are, you know, actively in relationship with the Lord. It's not about becoming a new creation again. It's about letting go of the old creation, right? The old self that's hanging on and lingering onto you, right? And letting go of those things so that you can move freely, right? You have less weight on you. And when you do that, you are more yourself than you ever have been before. And you're able to be a light to those around you and to your spouse. And so if you're miserable right now in your marriage and you're like, man, I just wish my spouse was a different way, chances are everything that's bothering you about your spouse is stuff that you actually have problems with yourself. So put down the magnifying glass, pick up the mirror, clean those things up yourself.
And go to therapy.
Go to
No,
therapy.
I'm just kidding.
And I want to put a caveat on this. Therapy isn't necessarily a good fit for everyone, and it's really hard to find a good therapist.
That's very true.
A lot of therapists will introvert you, aka put you focused inward on yourself and like just, you know, making it's a lot about self-pity, things like that. So be very mindful about therapy. Again, I recommend seeking spiritual guidance on these things. But it really just boils down to like letting go of the junk, right? So that you can move freely and be a light to your spouse, and your spouse will follow, right? Naturally.
Yeah.
So anyway, just a small rant right there. Anything you want to add to that before we wrap up?
I think there's a quote or some kind of story where it's like, pursue God, run after God as fast as you can, and the right person will follow. But now that, you know, that's really more about dating. But in marriage, it's the same way. Like, pursue God, chase after God, run as fast as you can towards God, and then inspire your spouse to do the same thing. Don't put them down if they're not, but inspire them. Don't look at them and say, you're not doing this.
Yeah.
Instead say, I don't know.
And I want to add to this real quickly, a small caveat. If you are a Christian married to a non-Christian, if you're a believer married to a non-believer, then this is another way that you can be a light to your spouse, right? And there's a lot of difficulty and challenge that comes with being unequally yoked. And we are no strangers to that. We totally, you know, get that it is difficult and complicated. But rather than trying to change your spouse, let your spouse see what the Lord is doing in your life. Let your spouse see your repentance. Let your spouse see your fasting. Let your spouse see you seeking the Lord, your humility, taking accountability and ownership for things. Be the first one to apologize. Be the first one to forgive. Don't be the one trying to change your spouse with a critical heart. That's a Pharisaical spirit. That's what the Pharisees did. And the Pharisees were condemned. The ones who are righteous were the ones who recognize that they are the chief of all sinners.
I was literally just about to say that.
Talk about that a little bit. That's kind of something that's like talked a lot about in Orthodoxy, right? And obviously coming from Paul saying, you know, I am the chief of sinners, in his writings. But talk a little bit more about this, because this is something that if, you know, a Protestant or a Catholic is listening to this, it may not be something that they are as familiar with, and it's talked about a lot in Orthodoxy. So talk a little bit about kind of what that's looked like in your life.
I honestly feel like you're better for talking about this, but there's a prayer in the Orthodox Church that says, Lord Jesus, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. Or viewing yourself as the chief of all sinners. Again, that just reflects back on looking at yourself and not other people, and looking at the sin in your heart and not other people. And I think you're better at talking about
Well, no,
this.
that's huge. And I think even like to put a different side of it, it's looking at your own sin, but also looking at the virtue in others.
Mm.
So, and this is another thing, and we should just have a whole episode on this, but the difference between calling out versus calling up.
Oh, yes.
Right?
We can explain that real quick.
Yeah, I think this is also from Melody.
Yes.
Is that right? Okay,
Yeah,
so Melody Fabian, again, shout out to her. There's a difference between calling out your spouse on the things they're doing wrong and calling up your spouse.
Can I go into this?
Yeah.
So one of the examples she gave, I know I might butcher this, but rather than looking at your spouse and being like, hey, you've been really mean to me lately, like attacking them, that blaming them, or
even the therapy way of doing it, which is like, this is good communication, right? I feel like
you've been attacking me,
right? It's like right? Yeah. It's like that doesn't do any good. Or even saying it's like, I feel attacked, like that's probably the healthiest way you can put it, but it's still doesn't have the same effect.
Because the other person's going to be like attacking you.
Yeah.
I've not been attacking you.
But it's talk a little bit more about what calling up looks like.
Yeah. So rather than saying, I feel like you've been attacking me, or I feel attacked, you can say, hey, you've been... No, I'm sorry.
You've been attacking me.
You've been attacking me. Hey, you're a really nice person. I've seen that you've been a little more critical lately, and I just... Man, I'm just...
May I?
Yeah, you can jump in.
So I know you to be the person that I've married is someone who's so enriching and life-giving. And like, you see that every day. Like, you're constantly building others up. I've noticed today that hasn't been the case. What's going on?
Yeah. And you tie it to their identity. You tie the good virtues to their identity.
And all of the bad stuff is the lies of the enemy that's being caked on.
It's also looking at it as an action. It's not looking at the bad thing as their identity. It's looking at that as like what's going on? What's the situation?
Yep. And so like being able to view it from that perspective of, hey, I want to see my spouse in the best light, and I want to see the sin in my own heart, right? I'm not going to be the first to call out my own virtues. I'm going to be the first to call out my own sin. I'm going to be the first to ask for forgiveness, to apologize. And I want to see all of the good things in my spouse, rather than looking at all the ways that my spouse is hurting me, recognizing that you reap what you sow, and everything that my spouse is throwing on me right now, I've probably thrown it back out twofold, right?
Fair.
And so it is seeing your spouse in the best light possible. And so if there is something that does need to be addressed, right, addressing it from a manner of, hey, calling out the good that is their true identity, and then addressing that what's happening right now isn't who they are. It's not in line with their identity. So it's like, hey, calling them up, right, to who they truly are. So an example for this might be, what's something that I do that annoys you? Oh, come on. It's probably a long list. Come on.
Sometimes you spend a lot of time at work.
Yes.
More than I'd prefer.
That's a huge one, right? Workaholism is something that I've struggled with in the past. And it's a daily battle, right?
But it's not your identity.
It's not my identity. And so the patients could come at me and she could say, hey, Aaron, you're working too much, or you're working a lot.
Or I feel like you've been working too much.
And that would invalidate all of the work that I'm doing as a provider, right? Because I'm doing it for you, right? And so it's like, you're invalidating everything that I'm doing. She could also come to me and she could say, hey, I've been feeling lonely, which is, again, like super valid way of handling it, and very healthy. And we should probably have a whole episode where we talk about like a proper way to communicate through conflict. And that's super important. But on its own, it's just focusing on the negative, right? And it's just focusing on what I'm doing
absolutely
wrong, right? But if she comes to me and she's saying, hey, the man that I married, like, I've seen you focusing on our family. I've seen you focusing on, pouring into, myself, my kids, whatever it is. And you also work really hard because you are, you want to provide for the family. You want to take care of them. And I think that's amazing. I've noticed lately that I've been feeling lonely, and I've been feeling that way, I think, I think I'm noticing that you are not in line with the same man that I know you to be, right? You're working a little too much. And I know that's not you.
I know you to be a family man. I
I
know
know
you to
you to
be
be a
someone who
family.
cares about your wife.
Yes. It is not coming at it from a passive aggressive stance. It was like, I know you're a family man, right? But it's like genuinely, like
Yeah.
if you do see those things and if you don't see them, look for them, right? So that you can have the proof and you
Yeah.
can be like, hey, like you've done X, Y, Z. It's like, this is like, you are a family man. That's who you are, right? And then being like, lately, I've been feeling lonely and I've been trying to find out, why do I feel lonely? And I think it's like I'm seeing that, right now the enemy's trying to divide us, and you haven't been that person lately. What's going on?
Yeah.
Notice I'm not coming at this as like you need to do better. I'm coming at this from a place of curiosity.
Yeah.
I'm coming at this from a place of concern. It's like,
Yeah.
you're not acting like yourself. So something's got to be going on. Fill me in. What's going on?
Yeah.
I want to help. I want to hear you out. I want to give you a safe space, create space for you to really fill me in, And you're not invalidating the fact that you feel lonely. You're not invalidating that this is a wrong thing.
Yeah.
It is. But you're seeking understanding before you're seeking to be understood.
Yeah.
Right? Anything else you want to add to that?
What is that quote from Ted Lasso where it's like, be curious, not judgmental?
Yes.
Is that what it is?
Yes.
Yeah.
Be curious, not judgmental.
Ask questions. Try to seek to understand what's going on. And don't just assume that your man is trying to neglect you, or that he's forgotten about you, or whatever the case may be, for whatever conflict it is. Don't assume things. Be curious. Don't judge. Ask questions. Figure it out together. Yeah. And then from that, focus on how you can grow, how you can become better for your spouse through that conflict.
Yeah. And we just went into like a whole conversation here about conflict. This was really about focusing on personal development, but very good tangent, very good side note there. But at the core of it, it's okay, like focusing on the plank in our own eye. Focus on yourself. Pick up the mirror, put down the magnifying glass. Set aside, let go of that critical heart and realize it's okay. And this is something that I needed to hear from the Lord is it's okay. You don't need to change your wife. That's a lot of pressure on you. You can't anyway, right? Yeah. It's like, focus on yourself. That's something you can do, right? Pick up the mirror. And just hearing the Lord saying, I'm going to just speak truth over the people that are listening to this right now, is that the Lord will take care of your spouse. Yeah. The Lord will work in their heart. I promise you, if you're listening to this right now and you're struggling to let go of that critical heart like I did, I promise you, the Lord will take care of your spouse. Trust in him. Yeah. And it can be so hard, right, to trust. But I promise you, that when you do, really good things start to happen. Yeah. And let your spouse see you working on yourself. Let your spouse see you letting go of all of this baggage you're holding on from the old creation that is not who you truly are. Let your spouse see you letting go of the lies of the enemy that you've accepted for so long. Yeah. Let your spouse see you working on yourself to grow closer to the Lord and inviting him into your life. And when your spouse sees that, when you put the lamp on the table rather than under a bowl where it's hidden for your spouse to see, they will be inspired because you've let go of trying to change them. Yeah. And you focused on your own sin, taking accountability and ownership over that. Your own growth. Yeah. And then you're also calling up and you're seeing all of the good in your spouse. You're pointing out all of the virtues that you see in them, even if you can only find one. And for me, this was hard for so long because when I was like stuck in that caked in criticalness, I couldn't see anything good. Yeah. It was like there was nothing, right? And like I would be like, all right, like can I find one good thing about my wife? Like it was tough, right? But find one thing. If you need to sit down for a week and spend 3 hours a day with a notepad and write on the top of it and write great things about and put your wife's name or your husband's name right there. And then sit there and look intently until you can find one thing. Yeah. And then all you do is you just call out that virtue in them. and you just encourage that,
Yeah.
right? And you positively reinforce that virtue. Whenever you see it, call it out. Call out the good in them.
Yeah.
Call them up to live more in that sense, rather than calling out all the bad, right? Because what you focus on grows.
Yeah.
So if you focus on the bad, you'll get more bad. Recognize that everything rough in your spouse probably started with you, right? You get back what you put out. And so take ownership over those things in your own life. Call up your spouse. Call out the good in them rather than the bad.
Yeah.
Stay focused on your own growth. Let your spouse see that. And your spouse will, if the Lord is good, will be inspired to growth as well. And it may not happen immediately. It might
takes
take
time.
It might take a few months. It might take a few years. It might take a few decades. But even if you're 25 years old and you're married right now, and you don't see this happen until your spouse is on their deathbed, and 60 years down the line, and they look at you on the deathbed and they say, "Hey, I saw you working on yourself." And if you're in an unbelieving marriage, they say, "Tell me about that Jesus," on their deathbed, right? Or they say, "Hey, what is this? All this work that you've been doing. Thank you. Like, I really do feel like a little bit of that weight that I've been carrying my whole life is gone." Even if that's the last thing that happens in their entire life.
It's worth it.
It's worth it. Be patient in that.
Yeah.
And only do what the Lord is calling you to do, which is, quite frankly, not to change your spouse, but to love your spouse. And then to focus on your own growth and your own relationship with the Lord.
Absolutely. Yeah. You can't change what other people do, but you can change what you do.
100%. So again, thank you so much for hopping in and listening to or watching this episode. We love sitting down, having these conversations, and we're looking forward to doing many more and having these little chats. So we'll see you on the next one. Bye.